And what we're singing today. You just can't help it. That's okay.
Elon Musk walked into Twitter with a sink and said, "Let that sink in." Lydia Leitermann is here today to discuss that and much more on this episode of Jobob Unlimited. It starts right now.
It's actually Jobob.
Jobob
is a model citizen.
Live from the Dingy Bunker studio, here with my friend Lydia Leitermann, talking about Elon Musk, elections, senatorial candidates, stroke victims, among many other things. Lydia, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Great. You want to introduce yourself, kind of what you do? Lydia has a great story/background, and I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, so I used to be the producer over at Timcast IRL, which was one of the most fun things I've done in my life so far. And it really gave me a stance to kind of figure out what I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So when I moved on, I'm like, oh my gosh, now I know all these amazing people like Jobob, for example.
Yo.
I know, yeah. So I have a chance to talk to these people on my own over on my own YouTube channel, Sour Patch Lids.
Sour Patch Lids, and that's consistent across all of the internet.
Pretty consistent.
I'm not. I have like Jobob on one, then the Jobob
hard.
on the other. You know what's hard is we were talking about this, and not to like go on to a diatribe about this, but I have a little switcher here with all the cameras, and I can show Lydia, I can show me, I can show both of us.
That's nice.
And at Tim Pool's podcast, I thought that there was some automated system that switched the cameras whenever the individual talked. It was her the whole time. Now go watch a Timcast video and like be in awe of how quickly and accurately those videos were clipped.
Yeah,
or cut.
So I started to get a little bit of senioritis toward the end, and I really missed a couple switches, and I was like, oh gosh, everyone's gonna know I'm ready to go. But it was great. It was really fun to like listen to people talking and catch them when they were about to say something. I thought that was great.
So I wanted just to bring this back up here. This is Elon Musk going into Twitter. You wanted to talk about this. What are your initial thoughts? Because this deal is supposed to close tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah,
I think
I was seeing that banks were getting together the funds to make this happen. So it really is going to happen. Look at the smile on his face. I swear, this man is buying Twitter just so he can walk into their headquarters with a sink and say, let that sink in. And I am here for it. I freaking love it.
Lydia said before we started filming that Elon Musk just bought Twitter so that he could make dad jokes.
Correct.
And I don't think that's entirely a wrong take. So in your opinion or view of this whole thing, what's the most important factor?
I honestly am really optimistic about Elon Musk buying Twitter because I remember way back he bought a site called American Pravda and he never did anything with it, but he did. Yeah, it's an empty site.
I don't even know what that is.
It was just called American Pravda because he hated the mainstream media, and you can pull it up and there's not going to be anything on it, I don't think, unless someone else has bought it. But that has always been his shtick, has been something's really wrong with our mainstream media. And I am so glad that he bought the platform that all the journalists do all their screaming on, because it's going to be really fun.
Wait. So I'm confused. So he bought this platform and then just shut it down?
It was just a site. It was just a site, just a website that he never ended up doing
Interesting.
anything with.
Did it have traction?
He mentioned it in passing, and that's how I knew about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a Samoan football player. I forget his name. He was the center for Joe Montana. I know all these things about him. Anyways, there was a bar in Carson, California, which Carson, California has a high density of Samoan residents.
Oh, cool.
And I guess there was this bar and a bunch of Samoan/Tongan/Pacific Islanders would go there, and there would just be fights all the time.
Oh gosh, I'm sure.
So he used his NFL money to buy the bar and closed it.
Really?
Yeah, that's kind of seems like what you're talking about with Elon Musk making that site.
Yeah, well, maybe that was like a signal that he's gonna like shut down the media. I don't really know where he's going with that. I am optimistic because he came in and he's like, wow, we have a bunch of trolls here. I just was floored when he made that comment about diplomacy in Ukraine, and they yelled at him and told him to go F himself. And I'm like, he gave you Starlink, right?
Well, and are you talking about him? Which comment are you talking about? Are you talking about the Starlink thing where he's like, hey, I can't continue to pay for this entirely on my own?
No, that was something separate. And I completely understand that. That
makes
makes sense. That was him saying I think he took a poll. He said set up a poll about Ukraine. And he's like, how do we get peace in Ukraine? And one of their diplomats came out and was like, oh yeah, so you can go F yourself. And he's like, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to pull Starlink out because that's what they wanted.
Yeah,
I remember him
dude.
tweeting about that too. I was like, I don't feel like the Ukrainians want peace at this point, but I digress.
I've got your
Interesting,
Twitter
interesting
feed
meme.
up. I want to pull up this funny
Best
meme
of
here.
all time.
This is Elon Musk carrying a sink into Twitter, where that's the big domino, and it all started with Babylon Bee calling a man
That's
a
right.
man.
Yep. And he went on the Babylon Bee podcast. I remember that was really interesting too. I was like, what's going to happen here? 'Cause
Dude.
he really is taking this seriously.
Yeah, this is wild. This meme reminds me of, you remember the video of Donald Trump being mocked by Barack Obama at the White House
Yes.
Correspondents' Dinner,
Mhm.
however many years ago that was.
Apocryphal. Yeah. Very interesting. Oh, when he was reading the mean tweet and he was like, oh, at least I was president or whatever.
Oh
Something
yeah, at
about
least I
Donald
will
Trump.
be a president. And everybody
Yeah.
laughed, and Donald Trump was sitting there not laughing, and
Not
lo
laughing
and
at all.
behold, he's now was the president of the United States.
Indeed, correct.
I want to talk about some of these Senate races. We've been kind of hammering this kind of a lot the last couple days. You live in the Atlantic. Okay, I'm used to saying Pacific Northwest, but it's the Atlantic Northeast
Yeah.
in
inversion.
the Boston area, which is not Pennsylvania, but
close enough.
close
Yeah,
enough.
close.
I guess with this whole Fetterman stuff, you obviously watched the debate. Everybody
Did,
watched
yes,
the
didn't
debate.
have a choice.
Initial thoughts, because I do kind of want to play some of the clips on here.
Yeah, so what I initially thought and what I've been thinking for a really long time. First of all, I have to say, full disclosure, I am blocked by Giselle Fetterman because I went and I asked her questions. I was like, why are you doing this to your
Dude!
husband? Are you too?
Well, no. I'm not blocked by her, but so okay, this is the thing. We talked about this a little bit beforehand. Like, I don't consider myself a mean internet. Like, there are people on here on the internet that I agree with politically in their ideology and stuff, but they're like rude. They're just call people
Yeah.
libtards and all that
Ugh.
stuff. And that's fine if you want to do that. That's totally okay. I'm not that type of person, and I like to fight with ideas instead of people and personalities.
Mm-hmm.
But this one guy named Kasim Rashid. I don't know if you're familiar with this guy. But he posted a video that said something along the lines of like comparing the PPP loan to the student loan forgiveness. He's like, well, business owners got millions of dollars forgiven from loans. And he's like, but in his video, he said, Republicans, I like conservative or, freedom oriented
Not insane.
titles.
Yeah.
So he was like, if you have an argument, I'd love to hear it because I don't think you have one. And so I tweeted like the very obvious, like, hey, just so you know, like the PPP loan they didn't get you to pocket that. Like you had the whole requirement was to give it to your employees. And I laid it out very like cohesively, and I wasn't rude about it. And the dude blocked me.
Yep.
He's like, I said, like, he said specifically on his thing, I want to hear your response. And I gave him a response.
Lies. He didn't
And
want
then
to
he
hear it at
blocked
all.
me.
Yeah.
And then I made a reel about it and put it on Instagram and tagged him, and then he blocked me from that too.
Oh, wow.
Which,
Get
you know,
blocked on all platforms.
anyways, so you're blocked from
Yeah.
somebody who disagrees. I understand people blocking people for just being rude and
Right.
like not adding anything to the conversation.
That's pretty much the only reason I block people.
Yeah, and like there are even people that are rude and call me mean things every day, and I don't block them.
Mhm.
I actually don't think I've blocked anybody.
Really?
I'm not
That's
sure.
impressive.
I might be blocked one. I mute a lot of people
That's true.
Like
I
I-
do too.
because you can,
Yeah.
but I don't know. So okay, so you're blocked by John Fetterman's wife,
That's correct.
the other Giselle.
Yes, I am blocked by her because I pointed out, I forget exactly what I said, but I pointed out that her husband should probably not be running. And then yesterday in one of my own videos, I talked about how a woman who is sufficiently manipulative can alter the course of an entire country, because I think that's what Jill Biden did with her husband.
I would love for you to expand on that topic because you told me a little bit about it beforehand, and I would
Okay.
love to expand on the topic of wives/women in their roles as a mayor. I'll let you explain.
Okay.
Okay.
So here's what I laid out in my video. I was talking at first about how great it is that I have a wonderful married relationship. I love my spouse very much. And we recognize first and foremost that each of us have strengths and weaknesses, and the other person kind of comes in and fills in the gaps where we kind of aren't strong. Like my husband literally opens pickle jars for me. It's great. I get things off the top shelf for him because I'm a little taller than him, and he's more he's less emotional than I am. And so he kind of brings that logic. Now, what I was saying was that a good wife is somebody who will understand that her husband is going to be trying to do things that maybe he shouldn't do. a man's reach should exceed his grasp. He should always be going for something.
Mhm.
And if a wife isn't able to say, no, stop, don't do that, that's a bad idea, then I don't think she's in a sufficiently mature position as a spouse. I think she needs to rethink what she's doing, because if you're not sometimes saying no to your spouse, you're probably not spousing right.
Interesting.
Call me crazy.
I like that. Well, okay, so my background is in politics in the campaign sense, right? So
Right.
like I used to run campaigns and do all of the media stuff in the campaign world. And about a year and a half ago, I was like, there's so much of the conversation being missed by a lot of the pundits that I would see talking about stuff. And also, and this I think happens in like every profession, when you get journalists talking about your profession, you realize how uninformed the journalist talking about your profession is.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to talk more about this. But to your point, my wife and I sat down and had a conversation of whether or not I was going to go in front of the camera and do this sort of stuff, because, as you know, as well as I do and everybody else knows, there's a lot of heat that comes with this sort of stuff.
Right.
And so anyways, the bottom line is there was a big, long discussion, and we ultimately decided on like, yeah, as long as I stay within the parameters of not just being outright mean to people for the sake of being mean to people, and express things in a coherent way and sometimes a lighter hearted way, this would be something that we both can do. And, she gave me her blessing and health insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Because
there you go.
she has a real
that's very
job.
helpful, yeah.
And so I don't know. That's just kind of the conversation. I would imagine what you're kind of talking about is like those kind of interactions happening at a broader extent, but not in the Biden or Fetterman household.
Correct. Yes. And I think what happened in these households was these ladies wanted to be, for example, first lady. I think that Jill Biden loves her position of influence. And I think that Giselle Fetterman, I was looking at an article yesterday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show my audience, but I was looking at a Breitbart article from, I want to say 2018, or harking back to 2018, talking about how John wanted his wife to take his place if he was elected to this lieutenant governor position. And I was like, that is suspicious right off the bat, because why is he doing this? Yeah, he wanted to have his wife appointed.
Pulling this up right now just
Thank
so
you
we
for
can
doing this
see
for
it.
me.
Okay, so report: Democrat John Fetterman sought to have his wife appointed Braddock mayor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though that was an interim thing, I was still like, that is very strange. That's kind of interesting, right? Something to consider.
Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman running against Mehmet Oz in the states, yada, 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 yada. Reportedly sought to have his wife, Giselle Fetterman, appointed to political office.
Yeah.
From 2016. Why?
Because he didn't think that he'd be able to hold the position while he was lieutenant governor as mayor.
So he wants to hold it?
Yeah, he wanted to, like, I don't know, put a bookmark in it or something.
Dude.
So he wanted to like slide his wife in there, and I'm like, okay, that's shady.
I mean, there's so many different directions you could go here, but I don't like this idea of. Do you remember when John McCain passed away, and like in the polling, is it Cindy McCain? Was that his wife?
I think that's his wife. Yeah.
She was like the number one polling. So like in replacing him.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm like,
what?
Why?
Yeah.
I don't understand why.
To me, this smacks of like this honestly reminds me of a monarchy, where if you die, your son takes your place. Well, is your son the best replacement for you?
Okay.
Definitely not.
Here's the philosophical question, though, that I'm curious about. A lot of people's different answers. Do people, as a broad sense, want a king?
I'm starting to think they do. So we all know, I think that most of your audience and most of mine know that the presidency was not supposed to be a phone and a pen like Obama made it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not supposed to be Biden sitting down with a 27, stack of executive orders. It's supposed to be someone who is checked and balanced by two other branches of government. What we've made it into is a form of monarchy. We've turned into celebrity.
The best thing that I think I've heard on this, I forget who it was, and it was years ago, but somebody was like, the president should not be called the president. They should be called the president, because they're supposed to preside over the executive branch 33% of the government,
right?
Which is not what is happening now.
It's become very much like a form of monarchy. And you're welcome to disagree with me on that. I know in the specifics it's not exact, but at the same time, we've given the presidency far too much celebrity.
Okay, so here's another question that I'm curious of your thoughts about, and I'm curious about a lot of people's thoughts about this. So if this question becomes repetitive over the course of me doing this podcast, sorry.
Too bad.
But when the parties were dare I say, older rich men in smoke-filled rooms
Right.
and electing their candidate for president, and then that candidate would eventually go on to run for president, but they would run on the party's platform rather than what looks like happening now is that the person gets elected or gets nominated and then the party adapts to that person's platform. Which one is better?
That is a very interesting question. I don't know. I think it depends on the character quality of the person that you're electing. Because if you are going to follow in someone's footsteps, you better make darn sure that they are high quality people with actual resolve who will stick to what they say they'll do.
Well, do you get what I'm saying, right? Because like Donald Trump, when running for office, effectively people liked him because they liked him. And then once he became the nominee, he effectively set the platform for the party. Same thing with Hillary Clinton to an extent.
Obama
Definitely. Like there's stuff that Obama was saying on the campaign trail that, and I was super young at the time, but I've gone back and looked at stuff and gone like, there's no way that mainstream Democrats thought any of this stuff, but they moved to his side of the aisle. An extreme example of that is probably Bernie Sanders, who is effectively won, by the way. Like Bernie Sanders, although he hasn't won a presidential election, he pulled the party so far to his side that he might as well have won. And if he actually believes that his beliefs are what should be in place instead of a person, it would seem like he won. So I don't know what's better.
I don't know, because I think that I really feel like the president writ large shouldn't even have the amount of influence that he currently has.
Or she. They
You're
let
right.
women be
Okay,
president
that's
too.
True. That's
Lydia.
true. Oh, did you see that tweet from Hillary Clinton since her birthday was, I want to say, yesterday? Remember that tweet where she said,
hate that. Did you
"Happy
see that
birthday
tweet?
to this future president."
Oh,
that one.
yeah.
That one. Yeah. She posted a picture.
Wait.
She's an adorable child. She posted a picture of herself. She's like, "Happy birthday to this future president." And we're like, whoa, you're way wrong. That's so cringeworthy. I'm so sorry.
To this future. Because I know she tweeted that out.
Oh my gosh.
It was at 2016 when she said that. Yeah. October 26, 2016. Here we go.
Man.
Oops. What is this? Why is this?
What is this? We don't.
I thought I was
screenshot.
There we go. I'm sharing the wrong tab. Here we
go. Oh, I see. It's tab dependent. That's kind of cool.
Tab dependent.
So
I can do. Oh shoot! There we go.
I like
Happy
that.
birthday to this future president. Tweeted Hillary Clinton. She's a cute kid.
Yeah, look how sweet and innocent she used to be.
That's fine.
Before she got a taste for power. So I was talking about ambitious women yesterday. That was one of the things I was talking about. I was like, this is a serious problem for women. And I said that part of what we're seeing with our politics today is feminine political pathology. And I think that's not original to me. I think
break that down. Hold on. Big words, you're losing me. And I want to
Okay.
make sure we're not losing everybody else here too.
So feminine political pathology looks less like war, although still to some extent, because queens are some of the bloodiest rulers in history, historically speaking. Feminine political pathology is opening the borders and wanting everyone to be safe. And I don't know if that rings a bell to anyone recently, but trying to be safe over all else at the expense of liberty is pretty feminine in nature. Just saying. So that was my conclusion.
Have you delved into some of the biological evolutionary differences between men and women? I've talked about this a little bit, but I feel like it's such an obvious thing that never gets talked about. Like when you want to talk about who's more important to a society, the obvious answer, if you date back all the way to, however long ago BC, is women. Like women are more important to a society for one specific reason. They are able to have kids.
Correct.
And there is a limit on how many kids they can have.
Correct.
Let's just say hypothetically, if a tribe has 10 men and 10 women, right? The 10 women should be protected at all costs because they have a shelf life. If there's something risky to be done, you should send the men.
Right.
Because in theory, if 9 of those men die, you can still have the same number of kids. And I'm not talking about monogamy or anything like that. This is just
purely practically speaking.
Practically speaking, that's why women are more important to a culture society, which means they've been protected for a longer time, which means that men would go out and do the dangerous things because they needed to protect women, and then would sometimes get killed at
Often.
doing those things.
Often, yeah.
And with that, you want to talk about Darwinism and the evolutionary system. You've got men over the course of thousands of years becoming more and more agile and capable because they've been doing all of the risky things. I don't know.
Yeah,
What-
no, I have touched on this, and I'm certainly no expert, but I do find it fascinating because these are some of the things you can still see. Did you know that men are better at depth perception than women?
So, I want to. So yes,
This is because of hunting.
hunting.
Of course.
And this happens to me and my wife all the time. I'm curious if it happens to you and your husband. Men, the husbands, open up the fridge. Babe, where's the mustard?
Where's the
I
thing?
can't
I can't
find
the
it.
thing.
And you come along, it's right there.
You're not a gatherer.
No,
That's the problem.
because it's all about berries and all that stuff.
Did you know that women see more colors than men? This is exactly why.
More
this
colors?
is an
What do you
evolutionary
mean?
remnant. When you're gathering, you are looking hard for things that have a
Yes.
certain color. And
Yeah.
you're going to be able to find those certain things with a certain color, and it's going to gradually adapt you to being able to see more colors. So I've always found that really fascinating. And I know that's super simplified. I'm not an evolutionary biologist.
Oh, you're
by all
not?
means.
I feel like you
It's
would have
true.
mentioned
I know,
that.
I know. I think I would have mentioned that earlier on. But it's true. From my understanding, that is the simplest explanation for why women see more color than men and why men are better drivers because they have better depth perception.
Oh, I've never heard
Yeah,
it
think about that,
correlated
did
back
ya?
to
Yeah.
drivers.
Mhm.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we've noticed this in the car. I'm like, you gotta back off. And he's like, I have plenty of space. I'm like, it looks like you're closing the gap really fast. He's like, no, I don't. I'm not. It's fine.
I'm not gonna make. I'll make the
Don't
joke
make the joke.
afterward. But I have a very funny joke that you're gonna need to remind me to
Okay.
make. Why don't people talk about that sort of thing, or at least why is it not acknowledged?
I think that it should be because, first of all, it's really freaking interesting.
It
Right?
should be. You're right. It
It's
should be. But
fascinating.
why does it not?
Because it's not politically correct. We can no longer acknowledge. So this is something that used to bother me about racism when I was younger. I was like, why can't we acknowledge that, for example, this race is great at this thing? We can't even talk about it.
Okay.
Like, we have different strengths. This
Yeah.
is really translated to the gender binary for sure,
Mhm.
because women have gotten it into their heads they need to be second-rate men, which is so disappointing. Why would you want to be a second-rate anything? Why not be a first-rate lady?
Because men
Call
are
me
doing that
crazy.
now.
I know, exactly. It's a serious question, though. It's like, why are we doing this to ourselves? We're so confused.
Okay, sorry. You sounded like you were going to say something else, and while you're doing that, I want to pull something else
Go
up.
for it. I
that I
was going to
think-
say too that I really think that we need some serious, and I think we're going to get it because weak men create hard times. I think
Mhm.
we need some hard times to set us straight, honestly, because we are weak.
I'm looking
What are you
for
hunting
the
for?
Now This Joe Biden
no.
forum
Oh,
that I talked
gosh.
about on another thing. Why can't I find this? Do you know what I'm talking
Twitter
about?
suppressing Now This.
I don't know
I
because
didn't see that one.
you didn't see this forum.
Maybe I did. I don't recall.
Oh, dude.
I'm gonna look
Okay,
to see
so
if we can
we're
find
gonna.
it.
There was like a shoot. There was like a breakdown. All right, sorry. We're going to YouTube now because this is
It's very
that's
important.
crazy. I feel like I should be. That was a huge video. Now This Biden forum. What it was oh, here we go. Top moments from the Now This presidential forum with Joe Biden, which
Oh, jeez.
I need to. Do you subscribe to YouTube, whatever? Because to get rid of the ads.
YouTube Red or whatever.
Yeah, I don't, but I
No,
need to because of
cheapskate.
this thing, like this show or whatever.
Yeah, I think it would be
because-
worth it. I have YouTube Music and I love it, so YouTube
Oh,
Red
gotcha.
might be really good too. I don't know.
Let me see. I'm going to share this screen. Top
So
moments
great.
from
You can
whatever.
just share the tab. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, it's this StreamYard's incredible. So okay, we're gonna watch some of this, and I'll pause it for commentary here. Do you have or have not seen this?
I saw part of it.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about. Now.
Well, this is just kind of the top moments from here.
Has some
Let's
thoughts on
see.
Dylan.
Okay, music.
You're the
music.
single most educated generation in American history, not a joke. You're the single most engaged generation in American history. You're the single most generous generation in American history. I find no
Sorry, I gotta pause. It's most generous.
Are we? I don't know.
Well, what does generous mean?
So I'm
Does generous
assuming
mean voting to take other people's money at gunpoint?
that's how Democrats are generous. So I was actually looking into this yesterday because I was like, is it true? I was literally thinking about this in a restaurant because I'm a huge nerd, I guess. I was like, is it true that conservatives are more generous than leftists? What?
We made it 20
Say
seconds
it.
into this video before stopping
I'm
and
gonna
going on a
stop.
diatribe. No,
Immediately stop.
no,
Yeah.
continue. Go. I want to hear your
Yeah,
thought.
yeah.
I'm just laughing
I
at the
was like-
fact that we're 20 seconds in and
I
had
was
to stop.
Yeah, of course. Well, he's making a lot of allegations. He says we're the most educated, which first of all is terribly sad because we have no common sense. But it's true that conservatives are more generous with their own money.
Okay.
Leftists are
Oh, yeah,
generous
yeah,
with
of
other
course.
people's money.
Yeah.
That was interesting to me. I was like, oh, yep, that checks out. That
Okay,
makes perfect sense.
sorry. So now to go down the rabbit hole of education. So
boy.
this is kind of interesting. My wife does this like volunteer thing with foster kids,
Oh, cool.
which is great. But she was telling me that in the foster system in California, there's a lot of exemptions given to foster kids in their educational system, meaning that they don't have to meet all of the standards and they get set back. And so the question that I have here is, what is education even? Is education the piece of paper that you get at the end, or is it the actual knowledge, which is more difficult to measure? But in the same, well, why I was talking about the foster system education is like they're talking about, well, it helps these kids graduate. Like, okay, they've graduated.
At what
At-
cost?
they didn't learn anything.
Right.
What's the point of graduating if you didn't learn anything?
I do think that Joe Biden here is referring specifically to that little piece of paper because, you know, he's been talking about student loan forgiveness or whatever. He's talking about the student loan debt. He's talking about that little piece of paper. This is nothing meaningful. And I think that his level of, you know, dementia or whatever is going on there is such that he doesn't understand that the education people are getting is just, it's not only not good for them, it's actively bad for their mindset. I think that's contributing to disagree.
LA Unified School District recently dropped their
I
passing
saw
grades
that.
to a D, I think. It was a C for,
Wow.
well, yeah, D's get degrees. That was the whole thing. I can't find the specific
Wow.
article here. Yeah, D's get degrees, which means that a bunch of kids who get D's in their classes, which if you're a teacher, right, and you bump up your student's grade from F to a C, that looks suspicious. If you bump
Yes.
them from an F to a D just to get them
That's
to
okay.
graduate, it's not a huge jump.
Yeah.
But what the heck do these kids learn? That's the whole, like, as a taxpayer paying for the educational public schools, I would rather kids have to work hard to make sure they learn what I'm paying for them to learn rather than just get a stupid degree.
Yeah. I feel like you're taking the 30,000-foot view here because I don't think that state schools are a good idea at all.
Yeah.
I think that's a failed experiment.
Mhm.
That was never the way people were taught in the past.
I am curious then. Okay, I agree with you most part. What do you do though for the kids that whose family can't afford for them to go to school? Like, what is the option for that? And I
So-
don't actually know.
Yeah, it's hard. I know it's not simple and it's not, you know, it's not a one size fits all thing either. I love the idea of a micro school, not just because I feel like my husband could easily teach like 50 different classes. He used to teach kids to code, which was awesome. Great idea. He could teach math, he could teach drawing and writing and, you know, reasoning and all this stuff. But if you can't get into a micro school, then something like school choice is going to save your butt because
Yeah.
don't call me crazy.
No, that always seems like
Yeah.
the answer is school
Yeah,
choice.
right.
Like, look, if you're gonna have the government involved at any point, give them kids vouchers and let them go whatever school they want to.
Exactly.
Now, there should probably be some, and I hate being advocating for oversight, but there probably needs to be some sort of oversight so that charter schools don't take advantage of that, which we've
Right.
seen in some cases.
Right.
But you know, it would seem that with no competition, the public school system has gone out of control a
Little
little bit.
haywire, I would say so for sure. All right, should we
Um,
keep watching?
Yeah, I
the
was gonna
video?
say,
See how far we can get this
let's see if
time.
we can get a little bit further in this. Add this back in, and voila.
Rational reason why assault weapons should be able to be sold.
Whoa,
Period.
He switched gears.
that was a
fast.
lot.
And I
Yeah.
promise I'm going to do it. I'm going to go right at it again when they get back in session. These assault weapons are just that. They're made for one reason: to kill people.
What are your okay? Wait,
Okay.
hold on. Whoa. I don't Yeah. Okay. So first of all, yes,
Yes.
my gun is specifically to kill people. I don't want to.
Of
I
course.
never want to have to use my gun for the reasons why I have it.
Right.
But I have it so that I can kill people in case I need to.
So a gun reminds me a little bit of diplomacy, because the whole point is that you never have to use it. The fact that you have it is enough of an impetus for
Mhm.
someone to stop and say, I'm not going to break into this house.
Yes.
I will go somewhere else. It
Yeah.
seems like too much of a risk, not enough of a benefit to me.
Well, and this is that Jordan Peterson argument of like men should be, and this is again specifically towards men, but I feel like it relates to the gun debate too. It's like men should be able to physically be violent, but be able to control it. Like that's the
course.
whole martial arts practice.
Right.
But yeah, I own a gun not because I'm a hunter. Like I don't do any of the activities that gun owners do. The only reason I have it is to kill people, which I hope I never have to do.
Of course.
So
Of course.
anyways,
I want to know first and foremost. Before,
Yeah.
I want to hear from Joe Biden's mouth. So I have on Twitter, my perfect fantasy is being able to sit a leftist down and actually get a straight answer from them. I want to know what an assault weapon is. I want to know what that encompasses and why it's more dangerous than other things.
any weapon labeled AR, that's what it stands for. Assault rifle. That's
so
what
I'm
it is.
told, yeah. But we all know that's not true. I want to hear what they really think.
I think, well, so that's the problem is I think one, yeah, they mislabel Armalite rifles as assault rifles. That's what an AR-15 stands for. But I think if you actually get them down, they would go back into the corner of I just don't want any guns.
Right. Well,
Which-
then if you really don't want any guns, then you need to think through your mechanism for getting rid of the guns, because someone has to have guns.
Well, and also too, like I would love to tell them same. I
Yeah.
would love to live in a world where nobody needed one. That
Right.
would be fantastic. I would love to live in a world where everybody was equal in everything. That's just not possible. What you're
Right.
advocating for is changing human nature. Like, good luck with that. All I'm trying to do is change the way the government interacts with pre-existing human nature, not changing the entire way humans have done life for the last 30,000 years.
So I think part of the reason communism consistently fails and keeps being tried is because the people who keep trying it do not understand human nature. And this is something Scott Adams talks about frequently. He says Democrats don't understand human
Dilbert?
nature. The Dilbert creator.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
you gotta
Scott
listen to
Adams,
his podcast. He's a great podcast. He's over on Locals. He's over here in California too.
Oh,
Yeah, doing
Nice.
great stuff over here
Huh.
on the West Coast. Very
Cool.
cool. But yeah, he talks about how they misunderstand how humans operate and human motivations, I think is what he was saying.
interesting.
Yeah.
I want to skip ahead to
We're gonna make a little more progress than we have so
this
far.
Is not
It's
gonna,
gonna take a long
this
time.
is not going to work. I want to get to Dylan, who
Oh yeah.
okay. There's so much we can get to with Dylan.
Dylan
Sometimes
is
days watch
delightful.
vision medicines. Is this where is they them? I just don't want to be.
Where's Dylan? I always
I
use
can't.
first name.
I can't scrub through.
First name. I'm
I
not
guess.
sure. There is that.
No, maybe
No, that's somebody else.
That's somebody
Interesting. I
else.
don't know who that is.
You're watching too for
Do,
Dylan. So
do,
just
do.
so FYI, the lag here is trying to find.
I
Did they
have-
cut they out of this?
No, I don't think so. Maybe toward the end. Maybe they made a separate clip for them. I have this controversial theory that women are born, not worn. And that is my hashtag. Women are born,
Okay,
not
I had to think about that
worn.
for a second because I'm trying to
'Cause
do
I
multiple
think,
things.
yeah, I know. That's my thing. That's what I'm going for. I'm trying to popularize that. I want it on t-shirts and mugs because we already have, the definition of a woman is adult human female.
What I don't want to say ethnicity. Like, where did your family immigrate to
Originate
United
from?
from? Yeah,
So my family is from Ireland, probably for the most part. County
and
Cork.
how much does St. Patrick's Day offend you?
Not
It's a
at all.
culture, not a costume.
That's right. I know. I think it's great. Well, first of all, alcoholism is the truly great equalizer. Let's be real. Like you can go to Russia, you can go to, the Middle East, you can go to the Southeast Asia, and there will always be alcohol. It's like dumplings, but with drinks. It's great.
Okay, then living in Boston, how much does it make you upset that they pronounce Celtics wrong?
I don't
The Boston
care.
Celtics.
I
No,
don't
you
care.
should care,
Why
Lydia.
should
Be
I
mad.
care? No.
Be mad about this.
No.
Um,
I think that, people underestimate how much Irish people were persecuted by the early Americans too, because they were Catholic and
Mhm.
America was a Protestant country. And they were like, oh, well, these Catholics, they have a bunch of kids. If we turn them loose, they're going to have, they're going to outbreed us. Like, that's a very real concern, to be fair. But, we wanted to make the U.S. into something of a melting pot. So you have to accept the Catholics too.
I gotta pause this because I don't pay for the YouTube thing, but I think I will because of this thing
There we
specifically.
go.
Here's-
Oh, okay. Here we
here's-
go.
Here's Dylan specifically.
Dylan Mulvaney.
All right,
Everyone's fave.
we're just gonna watch this and let it fly and see
Okay.
what's going
I'll
on
hold
here.
my fire.
Yep.
LGBTQ+ bills introduced and enacted, outlawing things like gender-affirming healthcare and banning kids from playing
I
sports.
already want to pause.
To go
it.
deeper into this
Let's do it.
issue, here with us today is Dylan Mulvaney, who's welcomed us into her life by, showing on social media her girlhood series. Let's take a look.
My name is Dylan Mulvaney. I am a trans woman, and I am documenting my transition publicly on TikTok for the world to see. When people started watching and the numbers kept getting higher, I realized quickly how public my transition would be. Of course, I knew that there would be backlash and negativity. I try to not let the internet's words hurt me or my spirit. But do you know what does hurt? Seeing people in power and authority figures creating laws and bills that are actively trying to harm us trans humans,
I haven't
especially
seen this
trans
before.
children.
This is an
Our
interesting
lives have
little clip.
become
Yeah.
political talking points. Lawmakers in many states want to exclude us from participating in sports or getting proper health care. Some folks want to decide where we can use the bathroom. No one should have fear living in a state that they call home while
Working very
being
hard
true
to
to
keep my
Yeah, I was
themselves.
gonna say.
No
Jobob.
one should
Really
have their
trying.
lives put in danger because of who they are inside. That's why I'm sharing my story with the world. I'm using my platform to stand up for my community and for any of the little Dylans that deserve a clear path to their true identity.
Mr. President, this is my
Hang on,
200.
Do you want to comment on that first before we go into the actual video
Yeah.
thing? Because I feel like
I think I have a slightly different take on Dylan than some people. I was
Oh, okay.
watching some of Dylan's videos and I was like, I have a great deal of empathy for this person because this person seems genuine. They are an activist. I understand, and they're painting my entire side as horrible and evil, but at the same time, they strike me as deeply confused, very conflicted. They strike me as going at this in very much the wrong way. They clearly need to hit the gym. They've been skipping arm day a lot. And I just feel bad. I'm like, something's wrong in this person's life that they genuinely think the whole concept of being transgender, I think, has been sold to young girls, especially Abigail Schreier writes about that, as a way of getting rid of a bunch of your problems. And I don't know a single person who knows a woman. If you're a man, if you know a woman who has no problems, let me know, because I would like to meet this lady. And if you're a woman and know a man who has no problems or even fewer problems, I want to know this person too. This is kind of what they're selling. You won't have the issues that you have now if you're the opposite gender. I think it's a lie.
So my wife would say, and I don't want to speak for her, and I should have her talk about this, but at the same time,
Yeah, you
maybe
should podcast with her.
maybe not, considering her job and the line of work that
Yeah.
she's in, and not wanting to get her in trouble with the overlords that have command over her marriage and family therapist license.
Yeah, that's true. That's
But
fair.
I agree with you wholeheartedly in the sense that, like, I think if you look at some of the actions taken by a lot of the transgender people out there, a lot of it can be traced back to being some sort of trauma response.
Yeah.
And then if you look at it that way, it is honestly sad. Like
It's
it
terrible.
genuinely is sad. You should feel bad. And there was a story about, my wife used to work in a mental hospital, and they were having this discussion in their little group, and somebody said, well, she was kind of said, just openly asking a question like, do you know of any trans people who don't have like existing trauma that they need to unpack? And somebody was like, yeah, like there's a person here that like seems like a person that's, relatively normal and is able to function in society without, bringing their trauma up. And she looked at this person and said, we work in a mental hospital. This person
the
is
bar.
clearly
Yeah,
here for
yeah.
something that's wrong. And again, not, I don't want to put that assumption on everybody, but at the same time, like, when you look at the impact of trauma that it has on people's lives, and I think we're missing a huge factor by not acknowledging that.
Yeah.
I think.
I think so for sure. And I will say that I think that trans activists do actual harm in the real world, much more so than somebody who's simply
In what
gender
way?
dysphoric. Like trans activists are the
Oh,
ones who
got it,
will,
I got it.
go to Matt Walsh's and scream at him or whatever.
Got it.
And who will, threaten people or whatever.
Well,
But
it's just to be fair, I feel like that argument could be made for any activist, really.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
even activists you agree with, you're like, I agree with your policy, but the way
Calm
that you're
down.
presenting
Right.
it is not
Right.
helping people come to our side.
Right. So I think that the trans community is not well served by their activists. I think that's fair to say. And I also will say that even if someone has had trauma, I don't think that that is a reason to bow to everything that they demand.
True.
In fact, bowing to everything they demand is not the way to show them that you care about them.
Mhm.
There's something I know Jordan Peterson's going to come up again, but he talks about taking care of yourself like someone you were responsible for. And that means not caving to every desire that you have. Everything that pops up, you don't just do it.
Well, that just seems too difficult. I don't want to do
That
that.
sounds like a lot of work.
I want to go back to this video thing.
Okay,
I know
okay.
this is well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
21st day of publicly transitioning.
God
And,
love you.
Thank you. I am extremely privileged to live in a state that allows me access to the resources I need, and that decision is just between me and my doctors. But many states have lawmakers that feel like they can involve themselves in this very personal process. Do you think states should have a right to ban gender-affirming healthcare?
I don't think any state or anybody should have the right to do that. As a moral question and as a legal question. I just think it's wrong. You know, I think I was saying before we started that my deceased son, used to be the Attorney General of the state of Delaware. He passed the broadest piece of legislation that he, as Attorney General, was able to convince the legislature and the governor to sign that dealt with all gender affirming capability. I mean, there's a lot of, sometimes they try to block you from being able to access certain medicines, being able to access certain procedures and so on. None of that should be available. I mean, no state should be able to do that in my view.
Go on.
Okay. Well, thoughts?
I think that I have always thought that so I'm evolving my stance on this, as everyone should. You should evolve your thoughts as new truths, evidence.
No, I
reveals.
don't like
Yes.
anybody questioning what I think. I hate that. I'm gonna block you.
But the fact is that your ideas do change over time. If you are looking around at the world in a genuine way, you're gonna be like, oh, something new came up, something's changed. I'm gonna change my stance. I used to be of the opinion that fully grown adults should be able to do whatever they like on their own time, right?
This is what's happening to me. Sorry, continue.
Okay, so I'm kind of changing this because of what happened in the UK at the Princess Grace Hospital. There was
I don't know anything about this.
There was a victim of sexual assault. She was going in for a necessary operation. This was something she really needed to, continue living. And she said she wanted to be in the females only ward. She didn't want male care. She didn't want male caregivers. Now, that's a request that's not typically questioned. This is not a big deal, right? They canceled her surgery. She said that there was a trans person who came to the door of her room when she was getting one of her initial exams and just made eye contact with her and left. And she's like, what is going on? I'm terrified. She emphasized to them that she did not want a male caregiver. And they said that it's more important to them that they're trans caregivers, which apparently they have some, which I'd never seen before, at least when I worked in the hospital. Said it was more important to them that their trans caregivers feel comfortable than that this lady get the literal life-saving care that she needed.
So this is where I have ever evolving system. I'm for the most part, like, if you're an adult, I do not care what you do. Like, I literally could not care less if you wanted to do whatever you wanted, so long as whatever you wanted to do didn't lead to mistakes where you're asking me as the taxpayer to cover to fix it. Yeah. Right. If you want to spend all of your money on vacations and nice cars, fine. Just don't come crawling to me when you have no money in retirement. Right. That's all fine. Except now, like, this sort of stuff, like, if you would ask me a year ago, like, what do you think about transgender? Like, if you're an adult, like, why would I care?
Right.
Except for now, what appears to be the detriment to society as a whole seems like it could possibly become more bad, for lack of a better term, more bad than just letting people do their thing. So
So this has officially crossed the line from just letting people do what they like to recognizing that this is taking rights from women. So this is the female sports thing that Dylan was talking about.
Yeah.
This is women's bathrooms. This is women's spaces, like places where you were talking about earlier how women were traditionally considered special or more more special. We're doing great with English
Awesome.
today.
Vocabulary,
Yeah,
strong
on
suit.
point. Yep. But we talked about how important it is that women be, because people take great exception to this, but women are physically weaker than men. This is part of the reason that some of these terrible crimes are possible, because I know, crazy facts of biology, literally technically correct to assert that men on average, the weakest man tends to be stronger than the strongest women. So when you allow men into women's spaces, there is a great sense of unease, and there's going to be an increase in some of these terrible assaults that we see. And I take great exception to that. I see no reason for that to be normalized, which is one of the things that I see Dylan trying to do.
One of the things that I feel like also doesn't get talked about much in this whole idea of, men, I don't want to say versus women, but the comparison, right? You're talking about men are physically stronger than women. That's all true, but I feel like there's a lot of other things that aren't talked about in it going the other direction in terms of like being empathetic and like having, I hate to say sympathy and empathy, that sort of thing, because men can do that too, but women on a whole are better at it. Like there are just things that both sexes are better at. It's not just one way. If men are better at this and this and this, like, yeah, but when you have a society that needs to function, you have different areas of need that women fill better than men fill.
Exactly. Very true. One of the things that they found in Scandinavia, I think specifically Sweden and Norway, was that when they made everything completely equal for men and women, what they found was that more women went into nursing and more men went into engineering, because men love things and women love people. And you know what, men, when they go into medicine, do you know what they go into?
Surgery.
They go into anesthesiology.
Anesthesiology.
You know why?
Because they get to
Because when your patient is under anesthesia, they are a thing. They are not a person, and you're not building a relationship with them. I was like, this is the top paid tier.
Okay.
Anesthesiology.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to me. I was like, okay.
It's a top paid tier, not because it's men, because it's the most risky.
It is the riskiest. It requires the most attention to detail, and it requires that you view your patient as an object that you're fine tuning over the course of the operation. I've seen anesthesiology done. It requires a great deal of care. It requires a great deal of attention to detail that women are, by and large, not as interested in giving. Women love, I used to work in a hospital, women enjoy going into rooms and taking care of their patients.
Yeah.
They love walking in and building that rapport and having the actual bedside manner that lots of surgeons tend to lack. Like, I love my wrist surgeon, but he was direct to the point. I appreciated it. I was like, that's what you're there for, and I love you for it.
I'm just thinking of me going into a hospital room and be like, I hope these people don't talk to me. And then walk. That's how I am everywhere.
Right. But like, women are great at building that rapport, and they are the bridge between, the nurses are the bridge between the doctors and the patients. And nurses catch so many mistakes that doctors make because they're talking to the patient. The patient's, coming out and telling them. I was a nurse aide, so as the front line of defense, I'd be like, oh, this person's having a hard time walking today. Like, their blood pressure's a little low. Should maybe talk to the doctor about that and tell the nurse and go on up the line. That's why you need the relationship. And then at the top, you need the person to do the surgery who actually works on, the open heart was typically what I worked with, or, like my wrist I had done recently. And that's when your patient is an object and you are more focused and more able to do your job as a man. It's just factually correct. That's a quirk of nature that men are more oriented toward the logical patterns and the systems.
Well, I reject your facts and hate you for stating them.
I don't know what to tell you.
I want to get back a little bit more to this. So like thoughts on what the president said specifically, because what he said was he doesn't believe that there is any legal or moral reason why anybody at any state level should be rejecting trans affirmative care. Now, when people use the term affirmative care, I just want to be clear here. I happen to know some therapists very, very well who say that the practice in some states like California, which is the state we're in right now, says that if somebody who is trans is coming in for some sort of mental health treatment, I don't know what the correct term would be there, the protocol is not to at all say, hey, have you considered maybe not this? It is only in the mental space, at least, only to say, well, how can we work through this with you? So any thoughts on the president saying that there's no moral obligation, considering that is the standard some places?
Okay, so Joe Biden strikes me as the most opportunistic politician I think I've ever met. He's the person who sticks his finger in the air and sees which way the wind is blowing. He's always been that way. My parents called him a gaff pump back when he was vice president with Barack Obama. I think that with being a counselor, and Jordan Peterson, again, to circle back, talks about this quite a bit. He's like, you don't just affirm what someone wants. I personally hate the term gender affirming. We need to talk about what it actually is. It is a radical mastectomy. It is a penectomy. These are serious clinical terms. This is what you're getting into if you want gender affirming care. You're not affirming a gender. You're cutting away someone's natural born biological sex in the hopes of turning them into a second-rate permanent patient, ultimately, because you want to earn money. And this is morally depraved. And I don't care what Joe Biden says. There's clearly a moral impetus against this, and there always will be.
Huh.
Anyway.
Well, okay, so from a legal standpoint, right? Like Joe Biden just like that's the view of the president of the United States. Now I understand he's the type of person that says, find me which direction the crowd is going so I can
Right.
get out in front and lead them.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I also like this. Sorry, I was more fixated on the screen that we
I love
paused
it. Look
on.
at his eye. That's incredible. Poor man. Joe
Um,
Biden failed him.
But yeah, I don't know, dude. It's this is wild. You wanna watch what the next question is? I don't know. Is there any other questions, or does he just keep rambling
It's
here?
just Dylan being like, this isn't fair, and I don't get everything I want, so we should change that. And Biden's like, yes, you're the bravest person on earth. We're going to change everything for you, and more of the same. And it's just-
Did you see that story that happened a couple weeks ago? I think it was one of your northeastern Atlantic
boy.
states. It was like Pennsylvania or something. There was a high school volleyball team or something like that,
yeah.
where there was a girls team, and they didn't want to change in the locker room with the trans female that was also
Is
allowed
that
to play.
Penn State?
No, it was a high school.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember which one it was. Maybe I can look it up. But they were saying the argument being said was, well, everybody needs to feel comfortable, and if you don't feel comfortable changing in this locker room with this biological dude, you can go change in the private bathroom.
Yeah.
And every single girl on the team went and changed in the private bathroom.
They probably were all fine changing in the private bathroom together because they're all girls and they don't really mind.
Well, it was one stall, I think.
That really sucks.
Which and so like we're society bending over backwards for one person who, and again, if it were, let's just to put the shoe under the foot, if this was like a race thing and they're like, oh, there's a black volleyball player on our team and we don't want to change in the room with the black player, different story.
Would
Like
not fly.
F you guys, like you're changing in that locker room, like that's not cool.
Right.
But in this is clearly not as clear cut as skin pigmentation. We're talking about like anatomical differences. Like we're going to bend over back. Like imagine, how about you just have the transgender person change in the single
Yeah,
stall thing?
That would have been my approach.
Yeah.
But at the same time that we're doing this, I feel like by putting that trans person into that changing room and saying to all the other girls, okay, if you don't want to be around this person, you can go somewhere else. You're isolating the trans person. This isn't helping. Like, I don't think like this is building bridges or making anything better. You're isolating the trans person more, and you're making the girls more wary of what's going on here, which I think is a good thing. Because
Interesting.
where I thought you were going to go with this was the school that decided that they weren't going to play any more games because one
Yeah.
of their players got hit in the face by
By the
ball thrown.
volleyball.
Yeah. I don't blame them. But here's the thing. Women are very agreeable. So I
Mhm.
feel like I say we because it's my whole gender, but I feel like women aren't going to stand up to this until it becomes unavoidable. And I don't know what that point is going to be or if it ever will be.
Are you a fan of hastening the unavoidable? Do you get what I'm saying though? Like I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily talking about like launching like a false flag thing,
Right.
but like there is some parts of, let's take the transgender thing out of it. Just parts of society where there's a lot of people that I don't think this way, but like want the economy to fail to make Democrats look bad so that they can take power. Like I don't know about that. So in terms of like hastening that inevitable point in terms of women's sports, is that like, I don't know, do we just wait for it to happen? Or maybe, I don't know.
I think
I don't know
that,
what you do.
I think that what we need to do. So this is a problem that I was actually talking to Heather Hang about a long time ago. A couple years ago, I asked her, why aren't women more interested in current events and news? And she said women are just busier. And she's correct, because women do very important things that don't involve reading the newspapers all day. But I think that unless you can educate women about what's happening and what the risks are to their sports, they're just going to keep going along, and they'll be just going along to get along. Oh, it's just my school. Oh, it's not a big deal. This is something that I can kind of hunker down and live through.
This is totally, well, it's kind of related, but my wife is the best confrontation. Like, if we're in a hotel and we have like a crappy room, I'm just like, whatever, I don't really care. She will go and get us a new hotel room. Are you like that, or are you not like? I don't know.
I am like that.
Good.
My husband tells me that I pick all the battles, and I'm like, yeah, I do, because somebody's got to do it. He's very, very nice. He's very conciliatory, but I'm like, we got to figure this out. We're gonna, make the change.
Yeah.
He's good because he'll tell the waiter when they bring him the wrong thing or whatever. But I tend to be the person who will be like, I will call you by your first name before I call you by the incorrect pronouns, because I believe in telling you the truth above all else, even if it hurts your feelings.
Okay, so then how does that mentality translate to this sort of thing in a broader scope of women in general?
I wish that women would be a little less agreeable on the whole. I feel like they need the feminine form of a Jordan Peterson. I've thought that for a while. I don't know
Is
who
that
it's going to
you?
be. No, it's definitely not me, because it needs to be someone who's super, super smart, probably someone who's taught, and someone who's really good at conveying the message they need to get across. I feel like Abigail Schreier is great. I personally really like Lila Rose, but I know that not all women are as pro-life as Lila Rose. But she's a really good communicator too. So we just need to, like Lauren Chen, I think is wonderful. I think she'd be great, because she can just get that point across well.
I met Lauren for the first time, in July?
She's great.
She's
right?
super cool.
She's so cool.
Yeah.
Like, just a really genuine
One
person.
Chill.
Very chill.
Like there's we were talking a little bit about this earlier. There's some people that are in this media space
not
that
chill.
are a little neurotic.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing.
It's
just
what it is.
Sometimes it's a little difficult to like just hang out. Like, that's not something that they do. So
Right. Lauren Chen she went out with me and my husband the day before her daughter was born, and she was throwing axes.
Whoa.
Throwing axes, those sharp weapons. And I was like,
Yeah.
she could barely move. She's like, you're fully 9 months pregnant, and she was just throwing axes. I was so impressed by that. Oh, that's great.
You know what I thought was interesting with just demographics wise? As a political consultant running races, right? Men generally tend to lean more conservative in their value systems and voting.
Correct.
Women tend to lean more liberal in the sense of, empathy and all that sort of stuff, which I think happens not necessarily understanding the implications of those empathetic decisions, which is fine. Like, I get that. That's just kind of a process of growing up in the political system. What I've seen, and this is entirely anecdotal, my Instagram and Facebook following, when I look at the analytics, the plurality of people that follow all the stuff that I'm doing, especially from a hyper political page, I guess, no,
Really?
it's all like 35-year-old moms.
Huh. Interesting.
It is, right? Like, I like it's just like mama bears who are like, and that's it's not the majority, because the majority would be ridiculous, but it's like
That's great.
30% of my following is in that demographic, and like everything else is all scattered.
I'm so excited to hear that, because I really wanted to get women involved for a really long time. I do know that women tend to vote more with their emotions. I actually made the argument that we should repeal the 19th Amendment, not because women can vote. In general, I think that fewer people should vote. There should be a much higher standard for voting. If you'll recall, when the first keep cracking up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
That's great.
scandalize
I love
you.
it. I love it. I love the joke. I have a joke in my stand-up routine. Well, I don't know if I want to spoil the joke because I'm still using this on the road. But I have an entire bit about this that I think is funny. But
So I'm sure I'm going to catch heat for that. But I've always thought that fewer people should vote, because when I voted in Colorado, when I used to live in Colorado,
that's a different thing, though.
yeah.
That's
What do you mean?
I also agree. Not everybody should vote.
Right, right,
Like
right,
you should
right.
do, if you're not informed and you're not paying attention, do the American thing and don't
Yeah,
vote.
just sit on your butt. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You don't need to do anything.
And it's good. You're
It's
helping
okay.
the country.
Yeah, with this last election,
But
we
I don't know about
saw-
repealing the 19th Amendment. That
That
seems a
might
little.
be a bridge too far. Possibly so. Possibly so. But I do think that a lot of the problems we're seeing today are because we have this empathetic vote that we've never really had before.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
That's part of my stand-up bit.
Oh,
yes.
interesting.
Maybe
No,
I'll
sorry
show it to you.
ruin it.
I'll
Yeah, you
show
can
it
show it
to
to me
you.
after the
Yeah.
fact for sure.
Yeah. That's I don't. Again, like I don't think it necessarily comes down to gender binaries when it comes to
Sure.
how people vote. I think it's strictly an information thing.
Yes, yes.
Like people with low information voters tend to vote one way.
Well, this gets back to what I was saying about how women are not as up on current events as men are. Like in general, women
Why
tend
is
to
that?
watch. Women are
Anthropologically,
busy.
why is that?
Women are busier and women like relationally oriented stuff. This is why women like The View. Okay, call women crazy for sure, but they do like a bunch of ladies sitting around talking because the focus is on these friends chilling talking.
Okay, so that's also, so look at it from a podcasting talk radio standpoint. Like men, I think, like listening to other men talk.
Right.
Like, why is Ben Shapiro the biggest radio show / talk show out there? Charlie Kirk, like all of these dudes, Tim,
Yeah.
sitting
Dave
around
Smith, yeah.
talking. And like, why is it? I don't know. I see that, and I love listening. I listen to podcasts. Anytime if I'm on a run, if I'm working,
Yeah.
everything I'm doing,
Same.
I'm listening to well, same, but that's not always the case for women though.
I know.
Like my wife doesn't do that. She likes listening to music.
True too. Yeah. So a lot of women do just like to use their time being able to listen to things to disengage from the world because the world is big and crazy and overwhelming and scary. And it's possible that when you're more relationally oriented that you need a break from all of that. You don't want to necessarily hear people talking. My mother had 6 children and she did not want music. She didn't even want classical. When she had an opportunity, she wanted quiet.
Silence.
So I understand that too. It's when you're busy, when you're serving other people, when you're trying to accommodate others, sometimes you need space for yourself, and that doesn't involve the stress of news.
Okay, so then how do you get those people to be engaged? Not that listening to podcasts is the only way to be engaged, but like
Right.
how do you then do that?
Right. So one of the things I'm trying to do on my channel is to make it so that you are with me when I'm doing normal human stuff. Like somebody mentioned the idea of doing recipes. And I was like, well, I don't really want like a cooking show, but I love the idea of talking to people about how to make stuff and presenting myself as a normal person who just happens to be conservative, pro-life, like socially cued in and aware of what's going on in a way that's common sense that I think most people would agree with.
I think there's a huge play for that sort of thing. I'm putting out a cooking PDF with like 5 of the things that like,
Ooh.
because like, my wife does a lot of the cooking because she likes it. That's
Right.
like, we're a pretty egalitarian relationship in terms of
Right.
like you do it, but like in that egalitarianness, we've fallen into these
Same for
just
us.
this standard
us,
like
yeah.
gender roles. But at the same time, like if I do have to make dinner, there's my go-tos, and I'm like, I feel like husbands everywhere should like have these like
Yeah.
5 things on demand that they should be able to cook. But to your
I love
point
that
of like
idea.
to your point of being like relatable, the most engagement that I have on any of the social media stuff is like we're renovating one of our rental units
Oh,
and
yeah.
like pulling out vanities
Oh,
and like
yeah.
redoing floors. That's the thing that gets the most engagement. Oh, and also, what is it? What this guy does? A political talk show? Like,
Oh,
what is that?
interesting.
Like, I don't
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
that is. But yeah, no, I think it's a huge just being relational.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that I talked about when we first moved to this blue city we moved to. I said, I'm going to be real sneaky. I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm going to be a nice person who
Mhm.
does things like watch your cat for you when you're out of town.
Yeah.
I'm going to build relationships that are not political. And then I'm going to slip it in there that, oh, by the way, this really super normal person that you like talking to, they're conservative. My God.
Do you? Okay, so I've got, and this might be the sick, sinister, manipulative, maniacal part of me,
Boy.
but I really, really, really enjoy what's the reductio ad absurdum,
Oh, yeah.
assuming that somebody else's opinion is so crazy that you can't even like why would anybody do that? I do that to people, and I've moved some minds doing that. Like I just assume that people think the way I think when I'm talking about things, but I do it. I don't like go hardcore something. Like I just assume that they hate paying taxes as much as I do.
Right.
And then I see their brain working. Wait, okay, wait. I
do
think
hate
I'm
paying
supposed. I think I'm
taxes.
supposed to be against this guy on this thing, but I agree with this particular point, and he is so confident that I also think that I'm not going to press him on it.
There you go. That's persuasion. That's actually one of the things we found with Steve Bannon and Marjorie Taylor Greene when we had them on the show. We were like, well, if there
Were they
was
not together?
no, no,
Okay, I was gonna say.
if a leftist were to sit down with Steve Bannon, they would find that they agree with him on stuff like taxing corporations and all of this different stuff, and they would have a hard time with that. Like, I think that would shift their worldview a lot. In fact, most of the people I found who changed their mind about Donald Trump did so because they watched his actual speeches instead of listening to what the news was saying about the speeches.
And I hate to like talk about people that aren't here to defend themselves. Not that I'm
Do it.
not that I'm putting people on the defense, but like Tim doesn't fit into a category.
Right.
Like, and that's like
That's the full
weird
category,
to so many
yeah.
people. It's like this new brand of whatever this is. And generally speaking, I think he's convinced a lot more people for a more freedom-oriented mindset than some people who are only talking about that.
Right,
Which is a
exactly.
fascinating kind of dynamic.
I personally love the idea of being a normal person and then sliding it in that you believe these things.
My friend Isabel Brown, who I don't know if you know,
I'm familiar.
her whole thing is like, if you're going to change the culture, go to where the culture is.
Of course.
Like talk about things
Books
that
and
aren't
movies
politics.
and,
Like,
yeah,
and that's, I
music.
kind of general. I don't know what category I'm in. Like, clearly I have conservative beliefs from a societal standpoint, in terms of like, I pretty much align entirely with conservative ideals in the way that I live my life. In what role the government has in that's kind of, sometimes it's more of like a libertarian thoughts versus more conservative thoughts. But anyways, I also put out music. Like, is that a thing that people
Of
do?
course,
Like, what if Tucker
yeah.
Carlson dropped a rap album?
That would be great. I think that would do really well. I think people would find that hilarious. And honestly, I think that he should do something like that just to shake things up a little bit. But,
Yeah.
he's pretty old school. He's got a little bow tie, so probably not for him. But like
Yeah.
Tim is doing, he's making music too.
I
Like,
love
it's big deal to
it.
him. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
And I think that's an instance of just being a normal citizen of the world and then turning it on someone, not turning it on somebody, but pointing out to them that you thought that these views were crazy. Well, you like me. I'm a normal person. I think these things too. Now what? Yeah. So I think that you can kind of create a house of cards that you then topple for them and say, I'm a normal person and I'm also conservative. What are you gonna do now?
Usually we do these shows, we kind of like stick to the current events, but this is very interesting. So I found out, and I don't want to like dump on other people, but some people don't. I'm not going to say this.
People don't want to stray from certain things.
Well, no, there are instances of people that I know and love, and especially when I do news hits with them, like I'll go on Newsmax and be on like a panel, and the only thing they know how to say is, yes, that is stupid. Like, okay, well, what about the other commentary? And so it's fun having somebody else who has done a talk show type thing, and you can just go on different tangents in different directions as opposed to saying, yes, I agree, or that is stupid.
I've always found that so terminal because once you say your thing, you're done. Can't say anymore. I find that being like yourself, genuinely yourself, is much more straightforward.
Well, but nobody has one thought on something. Like, if and maybe this is part of just me being a contrarian, but if you're like, this desk is brown, if I felt like being in an argumentative mood, I'd be like, no, it's not.
It's reddish.
It's reddish brown. And then you're like,
Yeah.
well, what is reddish brown? Well, what is red? And now we're discussing on how the
mahogany and
yeah,
the spectrum,
the
and
primary
light.
colors,
Yeah.
and how does the prism of light affect these sorts of things. But
Right.
anyways, I don't know. It's kind of interesting just kind of doing this. And so what I'm meaning to say is I appreciate the conversation. This has been fun.
Yeah,
Anything
very
you want to
fun.
bring up before we kind of like wrap? Like, is there anything we didn't talk about or that you feel like so passionate about that you want to tell all 6 of the people watching?
Well, I do want to say one of the things that I mentioned on my video, my live stream yesterday, was that Jordan Peterson talks about how women are in a unique position to hold their sisters accountable. And I said, that's what I want to do with this video. I thought for a long time how I can make that happen. And I know there are at least some ladies in my audience. So I really just want to say, if you are given the opportunity to make your husband do what you want him to do because you want to get something out of it, I want you to reconsider. And I want you to think about whether it's in your character's best interest, your own personal self-development, whether it is in that spirit's best interest to be manipulative to try to get what you want. Do you want to be like Jill Biden? Do you want to be like Hillary Clinton and Giselle Fetterman? Because I don't think you do, and not just because of their politics. They're ultimately very manipulative. They're out for themselves. They're clearly using their husbands to get what they want. And I take great exception to that. That is an immoral thing to do.
Counterpoint.
Yes.
I'm just curious, we're just playing devil's advocate
for
here.
it.
What if they genuinely think doing what they're doing, like what if Jill Biden looked at the spectrum of the field in the 2020 candidate or presidential race and thought Joe Biden is the only person moderate enough to beat Donald Trump, which I can see. I don't know if I agree with that, but I could see that argument being made considering I think everybody else in that field loses.
Yeah.
And so with that, if she actually believed that this was supposed to happen, like, what do you do with that?
So that's a fair question for sure. And that's definitely something that she might have considered. But I think as the person who knows your husband the best, if you know that your husband is struggling to form sentences, if you know that he needs 15 different substances to get him out of bed in the morning, if you know that the reason that he's as popular as he is before the election is because he has not shown his face, because he calls a lid every day at 9 a.m., then you need to consider whether what you're doing is ultimately for the good of the country or if it is for your own self-aggrandizement.
That's
Yeah.
it. I like that response. That's
Yeah,
that's
my 2
interesting.
cents.
I'd be curious to see. Going back to what you said earlier, I would love to sit down and just ask.
Actually get an answer.
I would love to.
Yeah.
I honestly can't wait till all the books come out
Yeah.
of like what's going on in the White House right now that they are like, hey, Joe said, or what I think is he had a good day today. Let's get him a briefing right now. Or this is a bad day for him today.
We're not gonna do it.
We're going to find out all that stuff. Like all of that stuff is going to be written.
It's going to be really interesting.
And it's going to be fascinating,
For
and
sure.
it's going to be 20 years down the
Oh
road.
man, it's
So
gonna
there's
be
that.
so sad. And I worked with older people. Like I recognize sundowning, and I recognize this confusion and this frustration that men especially have when they can't formulate their thoughts. And it's just hard to watch.
Well, not to go into a whole different thing because I don't want to do that right now, but I make it evidently clear that I don't want to make fun of this.
No, I don't
Like
either.
I don't want this to be. I would much rather. This is going to get taken out of context. I would much rather Obama be the president so that I can hit him on policy stuff.
Right.
I don't want to have to hit this clearly struggling old guy who can't form a sentence and say, this is a national security issue. I don't want that to be the case.
The fact that you're in this position is because of his wife. Because someone pushed him to do this.
Circling back.
He did not have the wherewithal to get up every day and make this happen. No, there was a woman behind him pushing him to do this. Maybe the whole campaign, you could defer some of the responsibility to, like, for example, the Fetterman campaign. I know that his some of his leadership over there is shady as heck. But I think that the wives bear a lot of the responsibility because to me, it just looks like they're in it for power.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Hot takes.
Yeah, I know.
Lydia, how do people find you?
You guys can find me over on YouTube at Sour Patch Lids, as well as at sourpatchlits.me. That has all my socials. Thank
Can you
guys very
spell that
much.
out?
Sour, S-O-U-R, Patch, P-A-T-C-H-L-Y-D-S.
L-Y-D. That was the main thing.
So
It was
it's like
just
my nickname.
lids,
Yeah.
not L-I-D-S.
Yeah. I used to call it calling a lid L-Y-D every time
How
Joe
did
Biden
you-
would.
How'd you come to that?
So I just came by it because we were eating a bunch of Sour Patch Kids when we were in New Jersey. They started to burn a hole in Tim's mouth, so he kind of quit. But I love them. I was like, what rhymes with lids? Because I wanted to involve my nickname from when I was younger. So Sour Patch Lids.
Are you? I was just checking. Are you verified?
I'm not
You're
verified.
not going to get verified.
Yeah, I only have 178.
Only I
Only
have
71,
7,000
That's great.
Twitter followers.
Strong
It's crazy.
start.
It's crazy how like different people on different platforms are like more impactful. Like there's so many people on Twitter that have like 300,000 followers on Twitter and have like 3,000 on Instagram.
Man, I dunk on the Daily Beast constantly because they have over 1 million followers on Twitter and they get like 16 retweets. And I'm like, are you guys okay?
I was talking about this yesterday on
Really?
this show with another guy. Like, I don't believe the stats. New York Times has 54 million Twitter
No.
followers. Yeah, they do.
Don't
they do.
believe it. I don't believe that
you
those
don't
are real
believe-
people.
Yeah, you don't believe the number.
I believe
That's
the number
was on there.
exists, right? Well, what Elon Musk was finding was that there were so many more bots than they said,
Yeah.
and I'm willing to believe that plenty of my followers are bots for sure.
Let's just look
Yeah,
at that really
almost
quick.
55 million.
So 50,
subscribers
50
or
so
followers.
just call it 55 million subscribers. They have 32 likes on their most recent thing.
Yeah, dude.
Tell me how that makes sense.
Those are bots. They don't do anything. All they do is fluff out the numbers of subscribers.
We
or
scrolled
followers.
down yesterday to a Kanye tweet. Like, the hottest story on the planet right now is Kanye West, and it had like 300 retweets. It's like, no, like, there's no way.
I don't believe that for a second.
I realize I'm not showing this on the screen. So if you're just watching us, we're
just
scrolling through
down
Twitter.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So wild. Anyways,
Yeah. That's
hey.
something I saw for sure.
thanks so much for coming. This
Thank
is
you for
great.
having
I'm
me.
excited to do this in person too, because you live not close at all
That's
to
right. I
this,
live on the other side of the country.
but happened to be in Southern California and where this made sense. And are you given your husband's employment, are you going to be out here?
We probably will be out here several times a year. For
Anytime
sure.
you come, like,
I'll let
me
you know.
'Cause
Yeah.
so
it's
like
been
the thing with
great.
this too is like this is not like an interview type thing, even though it kind of like ends up talking about that sort of thing. The idea of this is like, let's talk about current events, and so with that, like, you don't have to wait a year to come back to where like
There's always new current events.
there's
It's
always new
great.
current events, and I like
It's
talking to
magical.
people, and I also like people coming in studio because we have this
Yes.
fun dynamic here as opposed to doing everything via the internet.
I love your haunted studio. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a basement, by the way.
I
If
love
you're just
your
watching this.
I love
it
your
is-
little guardians upstairs. They're wonderful too.
This is definitely not where I would bunker down when the FBI comes to take my guns. Not here.
Not
nope,
here.
not
Nope,
in this
not
place.
at all. Nope.
So awesome, Lydia. Hey, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having me, Jobob.
We will be back tomorrow. Actually, maybe not. I don't know. I'm going to be in Phoenix filming some stuff, so I have no idea if we're actually going to make it on here. If not, we'll be on Wednesday. Wednesday? The week doesn't start on Wednesday. I
think
meant to
it
say
starts on Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, so we'll see you then. Same time, different place. God bless America.